Breaking. Nigel Farage just cornered Keir Starmer in Parliament with 4 words that destroyed Labour's credibility with pensioners forever. And what happened next could trigger the biggest revolt of elderly voters in British history. At 2:47 p.m. yesterday, Farage stood in the House of Commons clutching a document that would shatter everything Starmer promised to Britain's elderly. The chamber was packed, cameras rolling, every eye on him. And then he spoke. "Prime Minister, explain this." 4 simple words. But the paper in his hand told a devastating story. A leaked Treasury memo titled Pension Reform Contingency Planning, page after page, revealed Labour's secret plan to means test the state pension starting April 2026. We're talking about stripping pension rights from anyone with savings over £20,000. Millions of pensioners who saved their entire lives, who did everything right, would lose hundreds of pounds every month. Starmer's face went pale. He fumbled his notes. He stammered about fiscal responsibility. But Farage wasn't finished. He had more ammunition, much more. If you want to see how this pension crisis destroys Labour, hit that subscribe button right now, because what comes next is absolutely brutal. Here's what sparked the confrontation that's tearing British politics apart. 3 weeks ago, a senior Treasury official leaked documents to Reform UK showing Labour's true pension plans. The memo wasn't some draft proposal. It was final policy, approved by Chancellor Rachel Reeves, scheduled for announcement after Christmas, when voters weren't paying attention. Farage's team verified every detail through 3 separate sources. His moment to strike was Prime Minister's questions. Maximum visibility, maximum damage. Standing at the dispatch box, he held that document like a weapon. And Starmer, who prides himself on being prepared, looked completely blindsided. He tried deflecting, talking about Conservative failures, blaming 14 years of Tory chaos. But Farage cut through it. Stop hiding behind the past. Answer the question, are you means-testing pensions or not? Starmer's response was catastrophic. He didn't deny it. He said pensioners with substantial savings didn't need full state support. The chamber erupted, Conservative MPs shouting, Reform UK members standing in protest. Even some Labour backbenchers looked horrified. SNP leader Stephen Flynn called it the most disgraceful statement I've heard from any Prime Minister in my lifetime. Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey demanded Starmer retract his words immediately. He refused. His exact words were captured on Parliament TV and replayed millions of times within hours. We must make difficult choices about who truly needs support in modern Britain. Those with significant personal resources cannot expect the state to subsidise their retirement when working families are struggling. Significant personal resources. He was talking about £20,000. 2 decades of saving £1,000 per year. That's what Labour considers wealthy. The backlash was instant and vicious. Within 90 minutes, Number Starmer Hates Pensioners was trending worldwide. Within 3 hours, Labour MPs' constituency offices were flooded with furious phone calls. Within 6 hours, the first Labour MP publicly broke ranks. Meanwhile, the pensioners who built this country, who survived rationing and worked 40 years paying national insurance contributions, are watching their security vanish. Margaret Foster, 71, from Middlesbrough, spent 43 years as an NHS nurse. She saved £32,000 for emergencies, for home repairs, for dignity in old age. Under Labour's plan, she loses £180 per month from her pension. That's £2,160 a year stolen because she was responsible. Her heating bills alone are £220 monthly in winter. I can't afford to eat properly and heat my home anymore, she told reporters with tears streaming down her face. I did everything they told me to do. I saved, I worked, I paid my taxes, and now Labour punishes me for it. Stories like Margaret's are everywhere. Dennis Wright, 68, a former coal miner from Durham, with £24,000 saved from his redundancy. He spent 35 years underground in conditions that destroyed his lungs and back. His savings represent every penny of his redundancy package when the mine closed in 1994. I breathed coal dust for this country, he said, struggling for breath even now. And Labour wants to take the only security I have left. Janet Palmer, 73, a retired teacher from Cornwall who scrimped for decades to save £28,000. She worked 2 jobs for 15 years, teaching during the day and cleaning offices at night, just to build that nest egg. She wanted to leave something for her grandchildren. Under Labour's policy, that dream dies. Keith Anderson, 70, a former postman from Glasgow whose modest nest egg of £26,000 now makes him a target. He walked 15 miles daily, delivering mail for 38 years. His knees are destroyed, his back is ruined, and now his government wants to punish him for being prudent. These aren't wealthy people. They're ordinary Brits who worked hard and saved responsibly. While they freeze and skip meals, asylum seekers receive £49 per week, plus free housing, free healthcare, free everything. Migrants who never paid a penny into the system get hotel accommodation costing taxpayers £8 million per day. 4-star hotels in seaside towns, full meals provided, heating included, while British pensioners ration their electricity and wear coats indoors. Labour councillors vote themselves £12,000 salary increases while pensioners choose between heating and eating. MPs claim £84,000 for second homes, while Margaret Foster rations her medication. Cabinet ministers enjoy taxpayer-funded chauffeurs while Dennis Wright takes 3 buses to save £4 on transport. The contrast is so obscene, so morally bankrupt that even traditionally Labour-supporting pensioners are saying enough is enough. Trade union leaders, who spent decades delivering Labour votes, are hearing fury from their retired members. Unite the Union received 14,000 complaints in 48 hours from retired members threatening to tear up their membership cards. One 76-year-old former steelworker wrote, "I picketed for this party. I bled for this party. I gave 50 years to this movement. And they stab us in the back." The GMB union held an emergency meeting where retired members demanded the union withdraw all support from Labour until the policy is scrapped. Even Len McCluskey, the former Unite boss and Starmer critic, called it a betrayal that will haunt Labour for a generation. Then something happened that nobody in Westminster expected. Just 48 hours after Farage's ambush, King Charles broke royal protocol in the most dramatic way possible. At a veterans' charity event in Edinburgh, he delivered remarks that sent shockwaves through Downing Street. Standing before 200 former service members, many in their 70s and 80s, Charles spoke about duty and sacrifice. "Those who served this nation deserve more than our gratitude," the King declared with unmistakable emotion. "They deserve security, dignity, and the pension promises made to them honoured in full." The room erupted in applause that lasted nearly 2 minutes. Veterans, some in wheelchairs, some with walking sticks, rose to their feet. Charles visibly struggled to maintain his composure, but constitutional experts immediately understood the significance. The monarch never comments on government policy, never takes sides, never risks political controversy, yet Charles had just publicly rebuked Labour's pension plans without naming them directly. Palace insiders reveal the king was genuinely furious after reading reports of pensioners cutting pills in half and skipping meals. One senior aide described him as more agitated than we've seen in years, after meeting a 76-year-old veteran who lost his home because he couldn't afford council tax increases. That veteran, Thomas Hutchinson, served in Northern Ireland and the Falklands. He was awarded medals for valour. And in 2024, he was evicted from the home he'd lived in for 42 years because rising costs exceeded his fixed income. Charles reportedly wept after their conversation. The speech wasn't written by palace writers. Charles himself drafted it, personally selecting every word for maximum impact. He spent 3 hours revising it, removing anything too politically direct but keeping the moral force intact. He consulted with constitutional lawyers to ensure he wasn't technically breaking royal neutrality, but everyone understood his target. He wanted Starmer to understand that attacking Britain's elderly crosses a line even the monarchy won't ignore. The optics are absolutely devastating for Labour. Britain's king defending pensioners while Britain's prime minister attacks them. The symbolism couldn't be clearer. The constitutional monarchy, representing tradition and continuity, standing with the generation that built modern Britain. Labour, supposedly the party of working people, punishing workers who had the audacity to save money. Constitutional experts called it the most direct royal intervention in government policy since the abdication crisis. Professor David Starkey described it as Charles drawing a constitutional line and daring Starmer to cross it. Former Supreme Court Justice Lord Sumption wrote, "The King has reminded Parliament that moral authority matters more than legislative power." Within hours, the crisis escalated into total chaos. Financial markets immediately reacted. The pound dropped 1.3% against the dollar in a single trading day, the sharpest one-day decline since Brexit. Currency traders described it as a confidence crisis in UK governance. Pension fund managers, already nervous about Labour's fiscal policies, started shifting assets abroad. The FTSE 100 dropped 248 points. The FTSE 250, which includes more UK-focused companies, fell even harder. Economists warned of capital flight. Business confidence collapsed to levels not seen since the 2008 financial crisis. International investment banks downgraded Britain's outlook from stable to negative. Goldman Sachs issued a research note warning clients about political instability creating fiscal uncertainty. FTSE 100 companies announced they were reconsidering UK investments. Unilever put £800 million in planned UK expansion on hold. AstraZeneca delayed a £300 million research facility. BP shifted investment priorities toward US operations. International investors expressed alarm at what they called wealth confiscation disguised as fiscal responsibility. The political fallout was even worse. Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch gave a blistering speech at Conservative campaign headquarters. Labour promised to protect pensioners. They lied. They promised security. They lied. They promised dignity. They lied about everything. Her words were broadcast on every news channel, replayed millions of times on social media. She went further, calling for an emergency vote of no confidence. A government that attacks its own elderly has lost its moral mandate to govern. Hashtag Save Our Pensioners trended #1 globally for 18 hours straight, accumulating 4.7 million tweets. TikTok videos showed young people crying as they talked about their grandparents being punished for saving. One video, posted by one 9-year-old university student Emma Chen, showed her visiting her 73-year-old grandmother who was wearing fingerless gloves indoors because she'd turned the heating off. My nan worked 40 years in a factory. Emma sobbed into the camera. She never asked for anything, and now she's freezing because Labour says she's too rich. That video alone hit 12 million views. Twitter erupted with photos of pensioners holding handwritten signs. I worked 45 years for this, and Labour betrayed my generation. One particularly viral image showed 81-year-old Frank Morrison, a D-Day veteran with his medals pinned to his coat, holding a sign reading, "I fought for this country. Labour fights against us." Facebook groups organising protests gained 340,000 members in 72 hours. One group, Pensioners Against Labour Betrayal, added members so quickly, Facebook's algorithms flagged it as suspicious activity. Age UK, the charity representing older Britons, issued an unprecedented statement calling Labour's policy morally reprehensible and economically illiterate. Their director, Caroline Abrahams, didn't hold back. This policy punishes responsibility, destroys trust, and condemns hundreds of thousands of elderly Britons to poverty. It's unconscionable. The National Pensioners Convention, traditionally aligned with Labour, withdrew its support entirely. Their statement was devastating. After 40 years of partnership, we can no longer associate with a party that treats pensioners as acceptable casualties. Polls showed the damage instantly. YouGov found 79% of over 65 seconds opposed means testing pensions. But the deeper numbers were even worse for Labour. Among people aged 50 to 64, those approaching retirement, opposition hit 71%. These are voters who spent their lives paying into the system and now see their future security evaporating. Labour's support among pensioners, previously 38%, collapsed to 19% overnight. In the critical 65-plus demographic, Reform UK surged to 39%. Conservatives held 36%. And Labour cratered to single digits. In traditional Labour strongholds like County Durham, Tyneside, and South Wales, elderly voters were defecting in record numbers. Focus groups in these areas revealed absolute fury. One retired miner in Merthyr Tydfil told pollsters, "My father voted Labour. I voted Labour for 50 years. My children voted Labour. Never again. They've betrayed everything we believed in." Reform UK's support among over 65 seconds surged from 18% to 41% in 1 week, the fastest demographic shift in modern British polling history. Inside Labour headquarters, absolute panic has replaced confidence. Ministers who spent months celebrating their election victory now face career-ending catastrophe. The WhatsApp groups tell the whole story. One group called Cabinet Concerns, where ministers supposedly coordinate messaging, has become a war zone. Messages leaked to The Times show ministers turning on each other viciously. One cabinet member wrote, "This is Keir's Chernobyl and Rachel's fingerprints are all over it." Another responded, "We need distance from this yesterday or we all go down." A third chimed in, "Who approved these numbers? £20k threshold is political malpractice." Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall, responsible for defending the indefensible, was overheard in a Westminster corridor saying to an aide, "How am I supposed to sell stripping pensions from nurses and miners? It's political suicide." She reportedly threw her briefing notes across her office and screamed, "They set me up to fail." 3 junior ministers have already resigned. Their resignation letters, leaked before Starmer even read them, paint a picture of complete dysfunction. One wrote, "I cannot defend policies that punish responsibility and reward irresponsibility. This isn't the Labour Party I joined." Another, "My grandmother worked in a factory for 40 years. Under our policy, she would lose her pension because she saved £22,000. I can't look her in the eye anymore." The third was most damning. "I was told this policy would be popular. I was told voters would understand tough choices. I was lied to, and I refuse to lie to the British people." Chancellor Rachel Reeves, the architect of this disaster, has gone completely silent. No interviews, no statements, no defence of her own policy. Her last public appearance was a disaster. At a Labour fundraiser in Manchester, she was confronted by 8-year-old former party member Susan Bradford. "You're taking my pension because I saved £23,000? Susan demanded. Reeves stammered about sustainability and fiscal reality. Susan responded, "I was a Labour councillor for 22 years. I delivered leaflets in the rain. I knocked on thousands of doors. And you're telling me I'm the problem?" The exchange was filmed and went massively viral. Sources close to Reeves reveal she's furious at Starmer for not controlling the narrative. She allegedly told him in a heated private meeting that lasted nearly 2 hours, "You promised this would be manageable. You said pensioners would understand." "Look at the polls. We're finished," Starmer reportedly shouted back. "You told me the numbers worked. You told me the threshold was defensible." Aides could hear the screaming match from outside the door. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner isn't defending Starmer either. She's been spotted meeting with Labour MPs one-on-one, separate from official cabinet business. These aren't casual conversations. They're strategic. She's asking about leadership scenarios, testing support levels, offering assurances of stability. Veteran observers recognise the pattern. She's not organising support. She's preparing a leadership challenge. When asked about the pension policy at a constituency event, Rayner gave the most lukewarm defence imaginable. "The Chancellor has her reasons," was all she would say. No ringing endorsement, no passionate defence, just cold distance. The atmosphere inside Number 10 is described as toxic. Aides describe Starmer as increasingly isolated, snapping at staff, refusing to accept polling data that contradicts his assumptions. One insider described him as living in a bunker mentality where everyone who disagrees is the enemy. He reportedly called one advisor a defeatist coward for suggesting the policy should be delayed. Another aide was dressed down for 30 minutes for showing him polling data. "I don't care what the polls say," Starmer allegedly shouted. "Polls change. This is about fiscal responsibility." But the polls aren't changing. They're getting worse. Daily tracking shows Labour hemorrhaging support across all demographics, but the collapse among over 50 seconds is approaching existential levels. Cabinet meetings, once collaborative, have become hostile. Ministers barely speak to each other. When policy discussions happen, they're perfunctory and tense. The unity that defined Labour's first months in government has shattered completely. But here's the revelation that could bring down the government completely. Leaked Treasury documents, obtained by the Telegraph, show Labour knew exactly what would happen. Internal projections predicted massive backlash, electoral disaster, and party civil war. The documents literally say, implementing means testing will likely cost Labour 60 to 80 seats in the next general election and permanently damage trust with older voters. They knew. They calculated the political cost and decided pensioners were acceptable casualties. The documents show something even more damaging. While planning to strip pensions from people with £20,000 in savings, Labour simultaneously approved £850 million in foreign aid increases and £420 million for climate initiatives in developing nations. They're taking money from British pensioners who worked their entire lives and sending it overseas. The optics of that are absolutely catastrophic. Think about what that means. Your grandmother, who saved £25,000 over 50 years of work, loses her pension. But Labour sends hundreds of millions to countries that never contributed to Britain's tax system. Voters can do the math. They can see the priorities. British pensioners freezing versus foreign aid increasing. British elderly skipping meals versus climate projects abroad. The messaging is clear. Labour values international reputation over domestic responsibility. Documents also reveal Starmer personally approved the £20,000 threshold, despite Treasury advisers warning it was too low. They recommended £50,000 to minimise political damage. Starmer overruled them, calling the higher threshold fiscally irresponsible. He chose this. The leaked emails show advisor David Morrison writing, PM, this threshold will capture hundreds of thousands of pensioners who are not wealthy by any measure. The political damage will be severe and sustained. Starmer's response, your concerns are noted but overruled. We proceed as planned. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is executing the political opportunity of his lifetime with surgical precision. While Labour panics and Starmer hides, Farage tours Britain visiting pensioners in their homes, broadcasting their stories, looking directly into cameras with genuine fury on behalf of forgotten Britons. In Blackpool, he met 4-year-old Patricia Davies, who worked as a cleaner for 42 years. Cameras captured her crying as she described choosing between heating and groceries. Farage looked devastated. This is what Labour has done to Britain, he said quietly. This is their legacy. The video went viral. 8.4 million views in 48 hours. In Stoke-on-Trent, Farage visited Dennis Wright, the former miner. Standing in Dennis's tiny council flat, Farage held up his payslips from 1,975, proving decades of national insurance contributions. This man paid into the system for 43 years. And Labour's going to take his pension because he saved for emergencies? It's theft. That clip hit 6.2 million views. Reform UK membership has exploded. The party gained 87,000 new members in 1 week, the fastest growth rate of any British political party in recorded history. Small donations are pouring in from pensioners themselves, £10 and £20 contributions from people who barely have enough to eat but want to fight back. One 77-year-old widow sent £15 with a note. This is my food money for 3 days. Please use it to stop Labour destroying what's left of my pension. Farage read that note on camera and openly wept. For the first time in British political history, Reform UK is polling ahead of Labour among over 60 seconds. The latest survey shows Conservatives at 34%, Reform UK at 31%, Labour at 22% nationwide. But among pensioners specifically, Reform UK leads with 43%, Conservatives at 32%, Labour at 11%. An entire generation that once formed Labour's backbone has abandoned them completely. Constituency-level polling shows something even more dramatic. In seats, Labour won by narrow margins. The over 6-5 swing to Reform could flip 40 to 50 constituencies if an election were held today. The next 72 hours will determine Britain's political future. Parliament reconvenes tomorrow, and Reform UK has tabled an emergency motion demanding Labour abandon means testing immediately. They have Conservative support. They have SNP support. They have Liberal Democrat support. Even some Labour backbenchers are wavering. If it passes, Starmer's authority evaporates. If it fails, millions of pensioners see proof that Westminster doesn't care about them. Both outcomes are catastrophic for Labour. Street protests are planned across Britain this weekend. Organisers expect 100,000 pensioners in London alone, possibly the largest elderly protest in British history. Similar protests are planned in Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Cardiff, Belfast, and dozens of smaller cities. If those images broadcast globally, Britain's elderly marching against their own government, Labour's reputation never recovers. International observers are watching with alarm. France's Le Monde called it Britain's pension suicide. Germany's Der Spiegel described it as political madness that threatens social cohesion. America's Wall Street Journal warned international investors that Britain is becoming unpredictable. Japan's Nikkei drew comparisons to their own demographic time bomb. This isn't just a political scandal. It's a constitutional crisis that threatens Britain's social contract. When a government breaks promises to those who built the nation, when politicians punish responsibility and reward irresponsibility, when pensioners march in the streets against betrayal, the entire system fractures. History will study this moment as either Labour's greatest mistake or the beginning of Britain's political realignment. At its centre stands Keir Starmer, who looks increasingly like a prime minister who has lost his party, lost his support, and lost any hope of redemption. So here's the question that matters. Does Starmer survive this pension betrayal, or is his government finished? Will pensioners forgive Labour, or has an entire generation been lost forever? Could Nigel Farage actually become Prime Minister by defending the elderly that Labour abandoned? What do you think happens next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and we want to hear your stories. If you're a pensioner affected by this crisis, tell us what Labour's betrayal means for your life. And if this story shocked you, if it made you angry, if it made you realise what's really happening in Westminster right now, share it with everyone who needs to see the truth. The mainstream media is already trying to bury this scandal, but we won't let them. Hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we're revealing the leaked WhatsApp messages from inside Labour's cabinet that prove they knew this would destroy them. You won't believe what they said about British pensioners when they thought nobody was listening.